digitization is changing business ecosystems, and new business models are emerging and forcing businesses to adapt. Also, the increasing complexity of products and the way how customer benefits are delivered makes it increasingly difficult to secure profitable positions in ecosystems. And here, IP is indispensable to develop and protect innovations and new business models, and especially digital business objects like apps and use cases, customer user journeys, thereby create added value. And so SMEs should focus on these aspects of their business models to secure their competitiveness and to be sure that they can offer exclusive customer benefits. The more digital business models become today, the easier is it to copy them, especially the basic idea of these business models on the one hand. But at the same time, it becomes more and more easy, or the probability becomes higher, to infringe third-party IP with this digital business models, or with the digital aspects of business models. So SME need to develop a brand for markets, especially for digital marketplaces, and should protect the appearance and the products and services which they offer, whether they are physical or digital. In addition, the app-based solutions should be protected. The uniqueness of product and service offers should be protected against simple copying or imitation, which is a broader aspect of copying. And SMEs should be sure that they have really freedom to operate for what they are doing, especially for their business model. So we see so many digital patents out there that it becomes more and more difficult to be sure that no third party comes up and say, you infringe my patent in the way you run your business model. Now, strategy gives coherence and directions to decisions and actions of a business. An IP strategy is forward-looking and concerned not only on how to compete but on the actual market, but also where the company is going in the future. So it's a little bit like, ice hockey playing. So it's not, the question is not where's the puck at the moment. You should be where the puck is in the next second. And that means you have to understand what's going on, because IP is always forward-looking. It's something for the future, and for the future positions which you would like to have. With successful IP strategies, SMEs are able to achieve competitive advantages, and not just having competitive advantages, also to make them sustainable, to generate growth, and to generate returns which are above the average. And that makes them profitable, and that is the opportunity for further growth. But I think it's very important that something like an isolated IP strategy doesn't exist. So people sometimes say, I need an IP strategy. So to a certain extent, yes, but to a certain extent, what you have to ask is, what exactly is the role of your IP within your company strategy? So what is the contribution which is IP-based? And what is the contribution of IP-based exclusivity to your business? By understanding this question and the answers to that question, the company understand not only their own business model better, also their competition strategy and the question how to satisfy the customer needs. When developing an IP strategy, you must consider your own company, but also the market environment. So the competition, the trends, the question what's going around in the market in the future. This can be done in a 360-degree approach. That means you look to both sides, the market-based view, that means the environment, and the resource-based view, that means you look into the resources of your company. In both cases you ask, what are the forces and what are my resources which I can use to create sustainable competitive advantages. A good IP strategy starts at the early stage of the product or service development, always focusing on the needs of the customer. So you don't wait till you invent something or till a creative process has happened. You start when you think about a business, when you think about how to make business, how to create digital objects like use cases, like apps, like customer journeys, you ask the question, what can be the role of IP-based exclusivity within that object, and how we can make sustainable revenues and profitabilities out of that exclusivity. The key question is, what do I want to forbid third parties? Because IP are forbidding rights. Sometimes people forget that, but this is the tricky issue, how property is designed here with intellectual property, and that means we have to ask what is the benefit for us from forbidding somebody something. For a business, that means that you have to make sure to understand what exactly is the needed exclusivity for your business based on your uniqueness and what are the distinguishing factors to your competitors. In IP valuation, the economic value of IP is determined based on the economic use of the IP, typically in an enterprise. So we do not determine anyhow an isolated value out of the blue. That doesn't exist. That does not exist for any economic object, economic good, also not for IP. And the valuation is increasingly important when IP is a relevant or even crucial part of the strategy. Because finally what we're looking for is the value contribution of our IP. And when we want to optimize that, we have to have an understanding where comes the value from for our IP. So in valuation of IP is especially necessary since IP does not have a value out of the context, but is always dependent on the business model and on the concrete explanation scenario of that IP within a certain business. So in IP valuation, you can ask the typical question, what is the value contribution of IP to the respective business? Or when you discuss that for the third party, maybe in transactions, then you ask the question, what is the value contribution of this IP for a third party in that respective business? IP valuation is about decision making, and the methods of IP valuation are derived from decision theory, because mostly we cannot refer to an active market for IP. That means we cannot simply observe prices out there for similar goods, here for similar IP, and say then, okay, the value of my IP is more or less the price which I observe for similar IP. Most of the cases for IP that doesn't make any sense. So that means we have to ask the question, when I have a certain decision, how would I decide according to the value, to the future economic benefit which lies into this specific decision. So in practical IP valuation, the valuator has to analyze the action alternatives. For example, alternative investments and the environmental conditions and the company and the economic and legal aspects. So the influencing factors to the value of IP. And based on these factors, the IP value is determined in a concrete decision scenario. So you start by understanding the decision scenario, asking which influencing factors are critical, and then you come up with a concrete method and you determine the value. Yeah, there are pitfalls, and some people say that valuation it's much more a piece of art than it is science. Yeah, to a certain extent it is art in terms of it has a lot to do with a subjective, concrete understanding of the situation, and it is not about determining with mathematical methods an abstract objective value, simply because that doesn't exist. For no economic good we have something like an objective value in terms of a figure which is always everywhere and under every circumstances right or correct. So that means each IP valuation is unique. And we have to understand the concrete exploitation situation of that IP, the transaction situation of that IP under specific conditions. The valuator must always analyze the decision situation in its uniqueness and the exploitation scenario to determine the value. Value in terms of future economic benefit out of ownership. And so the advice would be to base the individual IP valuation on typical valuation examples. So you should learn and compare what you're doing in your concrete case on case studies, on typical cases, and you can derive out of that your own practice. But definitely you should check every aspect which is influencing here. And if the chosen procedures and assumptions are really suitable for your concrete case. So you should be very careful by just copying certain practices, formulas, something like that. Most of the time this is not appropriate to do so. So we have to analyze the individual case, and if you don't choose an appropriate valuation method for the concrete situation, the valuation will not lead to reliable or meaningful figures, even when you do no mistakes with the math. Digitization forces companies to transform from an invention-driven to a value-driven IP management. So what is the meaning of invention-driven? This means, for example, that you don't wait till something is invented and then you patent the result, for example, of an R&D process. Or you're using IP passively to protect the result of any creative process. So the classical invention-driven process is you wait till the creative person made the creative work, and then after that happened you come with your IP and try to protect something. Value-driven is different. Value-driven means you understand, the company understand which IP-based exclusivity is needed for the business. And then you create, together with the creative people, the appropriate IP to fulfill the needs of your IP, or you can say to fulfill the needs of exclusivity based on IP. And this is true especially for digital solutions and objects. Value-driven means here that you design the solution, the digital solution, the product, the digital object like a use case customer journey, an app, from the very start in a way that it can be protected, especially patented. And you don't try to patent simply the development solution, because most of the cases that doesn't work anymore. So that means once you just wait till the digital product, the digital solution is there, it is not patentable anymore, simply because it does not fulfill the regulations for an invention which can be patented.